What is going on in Europe besides it just going to absolute shit?
In 1913, Britain controlled a quarter of the world's landmass. Imagine one country ruling one-fourth of Earth.
Absolutely.
But the even crazier part, just over a century later, economists are comparing the same Britain to Mississippi, which is the poorest state in America.
So you're telling me...
I found it a little absurd, so I started digging into the numbers.
Yeah, that seems like that's an insult to Mississippi to be comparing it to UK like that.
And man, was I startled by what I learned. I mean, how does a country go from ruling a fourth of humanity to struggling with basic stuff like healthcare, housing, and wages?
Borrowing costs have reached a 27-year high.
What happened to all the wealth they took from all the nations? I had to find the accurate answers, so I did what I always do. I went there myself. I spent 10 days investigating modern Britain.
I'm sorry, it's probably rainy, shitty food.
Speaking to people across classes, professions, locals, immigrants, and the on-ground reality I discovered was a reality so complex, it changed everything I thought I knew about developed economies.
The rule here is if you're in a hole, stop digging.
So in classic ABC...
What's the context? Just seeing what's going on in Europe, in the UK. Earlier we saw a video with like how Islam and Saudi Arabia are trying to, you know, extend their rules and reign. So I just curious to see what's UK's perspective on it, or what's happening in the UK from it.
I'm going to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly of a former empire in transformation.
From riches to rags. That's not the direction you want to go. And if I remember right, they like the whole thing with America and Britain is they were trying to tax us 2% on tea, just 2%, and America was like, taxation without representation. Fuck your tea. Into the river. We're gonna have a party over here. I don't know. That's how you want to enter this video.
The moment I arrived at Heathrow, I was extremely excited because I've grown up reading Enid Blyton, Sherlock Holmes, Jane Austen, which are all set right here. As soon as I stepped out, I met my first local right here, and I started with the questions. He was from Nigeria, and he had moved
like
to
20
London
bucks.
years
Yeah.
ago. He was a
For
driver
a year.
and was living on the outskirts, paying £1,700 as rent for a family of 4. It was a short chat, but he was quite happy, to be honest, as he said that the standard of education for his children in state schools here was way better what he would have been able to give them in his own country. He also casually mentioned that Nigeria is now one of the largest sources of immigrants to the UK, but he added with a smile, Indians are still number 1. So I looked at the numbers. It was right. India ranks number 1, making up 20% of immigrants that come to UK.
It's actually kind of crazy too, because you know that the Indian culture has affected the UK culture. Not saying it's a bad thing, but like the food that represents Europe is, or the England isn't even an English dish. It's tiki masala.
In 2023 alone, 250,000 Indians moved here to study and work. You know, there's so much Indian influence in some areas. I mean, there are signs in Punjabi on railway stations in areas like Southall in London. And this diversity isn't accidental. London has become a global epicenter for one simple reason: money.
I'm wondering why Europe, or why London. I guess that kind of makes sense.
This one city is worth more than $618 billion. You know, that's larger than the entire economy of Argentina. It's a good thing and a bad thing. The bad parts, though, we'll come to later. But the question is, why is London so insanely rich? See, when Britain ruled one-fourth of the world, they built an entire financial system where global trade flowed through London. And even though the empire is gone, that system stayed. So I met this 29-year-old Indian trader who's making around £200,000 in London. He explained it perfectly. He's like, look around you. We're literally in between New York and Tokyo. When New York closes, we start trading. When we wind up, Tokyo takes over. London is perfectly placed to be the world's trading hub. And he was right.
That's actually a very fair point. Talking about like global markets and global economy, that makes sense that it's kind of based out of London. Just because as America's waking up and then going to bed, they're right in the epicenter of it. And as they go to bed, Japan's waking up and getting ready for their day. And the American stock market reflects a lot of the Japanese stock market. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Right. Walk through London's financial district and you'll see what this means. Every other building houses either a major bank, a law firm, or a consulting company. Also, it's not just finance. I observed that London is also a powerhouse for scientific research. But you know one interesting thing I observed?
I think that's a super fair point, Raymond. Like, even when I'm saying like England, I'm just thinking of London, not like Liverpool or Manchester or all the other cities around it, you know?
With some of the managers and founders I spoke
I don't even
to
know if they're
there,
called cities.
was the challenges faced by them, which are pretty much the same what we face here, and that is juggling and managing expenses in a business. You yourself must have faced this in your life. So recently, after trying multiple things, I found Odoo Expenses, which I want to share with you all. Odoo is basically an all-in-one software that handles everything from point of sale to inventory management, helping you run your business smoothly. Now, with their expenses app, you would no longer have to scramble with large amounts of paperwork and drown in.
So tiki masala is widely believed to have been invented by the Indian migrants in UK, particularly attributed to Ali Ahmed Assam, as it's his glass grow restaurant in the 1970s.
Approve everything with one click or
So yeah, I guess it's still technically originated in England, but from Indian immigrants. It's kind of like both are right.
And seamlessly it handles the entire workflow from submission to approval to account integration.
Where did they spend our money?
Client-related expenses automatically
Yeah,
get
it's like,
tagged for invoicing. And as your business grows, you can just add more features to match your needs. The best part though is your first Odoo app is Mind and the Royal Society for their AI for Science Forum. And this was hands down one of the most inspiring experiences of my life. I saw 4 Nobel laureates on stage, met one of them, that's Jennifer Doudna, she's the mind behind CRISPR. I hung out with Derek from Veritasium.
If you guys don't know what CRISPR is like the most futuristic technology ever, where basically you could, the idea of CRISPR is like you could take your, you know, the double helix of your DNA. If there is a damaged DNA that maybe cause a unwanted mutation or a defect, you can go in there like with precision tools, clip that shit, put a new DNA sequence in that is the preferred one that you want, and like that's some like crazy shit. I don't know what Veristatum is. I don't know who Derek Mueller is.
Also witness the brilliant research that's happening at DeepMind at the intersection of science and...
Is that what its first practical use is going to be for, Raymond, is getting people with AIDS who have like their DNA's been actually like altered with it, going in there and fixing that DNA?
Yeah, you know, the people who I met here,
Bacterialism is great.
London itself, they dedicated their whole lives to science and
Very
research.
Cool. Super
just
cool.
working to push humanity
I don't know
forward.
anything about
One
the
of the standout moments for me was the talk on AlphaFold by...
Can we change dick size? I hope so, Shubi. If so, I'll be first in line.
DeepMind's founder, Demis. So, AlphaFold is basically DeepMind's revolutionary AI that predicts protein structures with near atomic accuracy.
You go to Dr. Miami? That's true, too.
It has saved up to 1 billion research years by mapping over 200 million protein structures.
Let's go to Miami.
Imagine that. A tool that turns years of painstaking research into mere minutes. This is literally accelerating drug discovery, vaccine development, and our understanding of diseases in ways that were once thought impossible. And I shared this with you guys because these 2 days really shifted my perspective about the world a little bit when I saw all
instead of going to Brazil, the guys go to Miami.
Testament to what brilliant humans are capable of and how the smartest minds are pushing the boundaries of AI and science. And this was all happening right here in London. This is where UK story gets really, really interesting.
This is where, like, with the hub of like AI and robots, I feel like I'm very much the component of this. So Pep, you probably can give more light on this especially from what you said in your text. Like, I think robots and automation is going to take over. I think it's sooner than later, but even with that, it's probably going to take longer than what I'm anticipating. You know, just for the reality of innovations and then implementations and rules and regulations, everything gets slowed down by that. I'm just really curious to see what the next 10 years of AI and automation look like. In London, 2 or 4% are white. Give it enough generations. There ain't no sunshine in London. Eventually, everyone's going to look like Casper.
So once one side, you have this city, these people doing groundbreaking scientific research, moving global finance, attracting the world's best talent, brilliant transportation and connectivity.
It's here now.
And then you
Yeah,
have the rest of the UK.
But I meant like
So
full
one of
on
the
like
locals I met told me
Terminator
that
style.
London
For
might
sure,
as well
for
be
sure.
a different country.
Like
If you're
robots
ambitious,
walking around,
there's
like
no
that's
other choice.
further
you
away.
have to come to London if you're in the UK. All the money flows to the Golden Triangle. That's Oxford, Cambridge,
Human
or
AI are
London.
gonna be one?
I was like, what about the other cities? There are top universities spread across UK, right? He was like, yeah, but you still have to move here if you really want to make it. This might be curious, so I dug deeper into this because this was a recurring comment I kept hearing from everyone. So there's this concept that I learned about, which the economists call the two-speed economy. It's basically when one part of the country charges ahead and the rest of it lags behind. Kind of like a business pouring all its resources into one ultra-profitable department while the rest of it is neglected. You know, this is what's happening to UK right now. People literally talk about UK as London and the rest of UK.
That's
Now we show you
literally-
some interesting stats. You know, London generates almost half of Britain's financial services revenue, but it only has 13% of Britain's population. So if you were
That's
to
insane.
remove London's output and headcount from Britain, it would shave
I wonder if they have it
14%
clean
of British
or
living
not made by white
standards.
people?
Let me put this in perspective.
Probably
Let's say
not.
if you were to remove San Francisco's opulent output, US GDP per capita would only dip by 4%. If you
Dude, there's a fungus that turns ants into actual zombies. It takes over the brains, makes them climb into the thing, and then explode in the spores, and it affects other people. Yeah, thankfully that cordyceps fungus for the ants doesn't affect us the same way, because we can eat cordyceps mushrooms all day and it helps us focus, right? But that was the whole thing of The Last of Us, is that fungus broke the bridge from animal to human, and it obviously caused a havoc. We could watch a video on that later, because that is a fascinating fungus and disease,
remove Mumbai
and it's so scary that like all it takes is one adaptation for it to affect humans, and we got a very big problem on our hands.
from India, it would dip by 5 to 6%. If you remove Germany's most productive city, Munich, only 1% would go. But for UK, man, the magnitude of UK's economic dependency on London. This, by the
Pat,
way,
based off
has
that text,
also
though,
had its own repercussions. Let me tell you the stories of a
Do you
few
think it's gonna be
locals I
within
met
10
on this
years or
journey.
later than
Their
10 years
stories will
that
shine
that
a
will
spotlight
happen?
on what's really happening. So one of the gentlemen I met, he had come to UK, Manchester for masters, and was now doing a marketing job in London because he
The Last
wasn't
of Us,
getting
yeah.
good pay anywhere else.
That was
he
a good show.
really distressed about his housing, and he told me the story of how he was paying £950 for a one-bedroom flat in South London, and then one day, suddenly, out of nowhere, his landlord casually says, next month rent is going up by 26%, pay £1,200 or leave. He tried reasoning with him, telling him, you know, I've lived here for a long time, I'm a good tenant, but no luck. That 26% was non-negotiable. And it's not just him. In 2022, London rents spiked by 17%, the biggest jump since 2007.
It seems like London and America are having this issue where it's like there's a lack of housing shortage, and it's crazy with all this immigration and not enough houses to be built. The supply and demand is going to be insane, where there's going to be not a lot of supply, a whole lot of demand, and it's almost like normalizing putting multi-generations into an apartment just to afford the overhead of rent. Super sad to see.
You know, average single owner.
I don't think this is going to be a problem for much longer, right? Because it's like it can't. This problem is non-sustainable. Like you can't sustain society with this problem, with a living situation that we were having. And it's not just here in America. It seems like it's over in London as well.
In London now spend half their income on rent.
Holy fuck.
And here's the shocking part. House prices have shot up 1,000% since the 1980s, while the wages have barely kept up. Why? See, councils used to build 100,000 homes every year, but they sold them off in the 80s and never built more. So now
No, I
there are
did that.
fewer homes, more people who need them, and prices that keep climbing higher and higher. It's like everyone's fighting over fewer and fewer spaces while paying more than ever before. I'll tell you another thing I learned about housing and property. something called inheritance tax. Let's say you want to avoid paying these exorbitant
This is
rents,
insane.
and you put together money to buy a property and then eventually want to pass it on to your kids. That also they've made difficult because your child has to pay 40% inheritance tax just to inherit this property.
That's criminal. You worked your whole life. You built up the assets. You got the generational wealth going on. You want to pass it down to your kids. And now the government thinks that they can take up to 40% of that? Stand up and fight back. Say no.
From the parent. Now talking about taxes, the taxes in UK are brutal. The minute you hit 50,000,
Yeah, like you get taxes for infrastructure and giving it back to the communities and developing your nation. What's been developed?
pounds, you're paying 40% of it to the government. One frustrated local was telling me that it's weird how my household income has literally doubled from what it was 10 years ago, and still somehow we have less money to spend. He was
I feel that I'm making more money than I ever have, and I'm barely able to keep up right now. I'm making more money than I ever have, and it feels like it's no different than I was 16.
like, we no longer have a car payment, we eat out less, we get coffee less, we haven't had credit card for over 5 years, have no credit card payments, and somehow still we have less disposable income now than we did before. Just buying the things we need to survive is taking up 95% of our money. Now the question here is, why has it gotten this bad?
Easy answer. A lack of actual ownership and what is it, like following through with responsibility of the leadership, and incompetent leadership. It feels like the leadership, the managerial class or the leadership class in corporations are no different than high level bureaucrats where there's no accountability and it's ran by a bunch of idiots.
Well, the UK is broke.
They're broke? I didn't expect that.
Austerity through two successive, extraordinarily expensive and damaging crises.
Get rid of the king?
Brexit, then COVID.
Off with the
then
heads!
The Russia-Ukraine war has left the UK with
That's
an
a reference to Alice in
enormous debt
Wonderland, not
burden.
actually me
Yet a
calling for
pandemic
violence.
forced the government to pour billions into relief efforts, further ballooning the national debt and leaving less room for crucial investments that are required in housing and healthcare. With the Bank of England hiking interest rates to combat inflation, the cost of servicing that debt has skyrocketed, further straining public finances. You know, even the energy crisis from the war is so bad that the British households were projected to pay 3 times the
The
previous
Just Stop Oil movement. God, that's so dumb.
price just to heat their homes during the winter. One of my friends was telling me that it was so absurd to be in London during this Christmas because most of the houses were dark. Very few people lit their houses because they simply don't have money to pay the extremely high electricity bills. He even jokingly said that if you want exposure, sure, yeah, come to London, but if you're not in finance or tech and you want to make money, run in the opposite direction. Also, this is not it. Let me tell you the next problem. So I met a nurse. She was in her mid-30s, full-time in the National Health Service, earning around £45,000. She was very proud of her profession, saying that, you know, the NHS was one.
Just curious, I want to do a conversion. 4,500 or 45,000 pounds into US dollars. So she's making respectable.
Once the jewel in Britain's crown.
Come to America, she's probably gonna get about like a 50% increase right off the rip.
But now she said every single person's leaving.
We're not just understaffed, we're burnt out. I've worked through COVID and endless winter crises. And now, the queue for operations is over 7 million people. It's bonkers.
The National Health Service has 124,000 empty positions right now.
Appreciate you, Shubi.
From doctors to nurses to support staff, and thousands more are planning to quit. Where are they going? They're either jumping to private healthcare for better pay or leaving the country entirely. Meanwhile, 7.4 million people are waiting for treatments and surgeries.
It's like you can't get mad at the nurses or the doctors for leaving who want a better life as well for the services that they're providing. Like, is ideally if they're gonna give government paid jobs and the government's taxing so much, you would ideally make the government paid jobs like high demand, high caliber people get those jobs, and incentivize them well. But obviously, they're the people who the oligarchs, the bureaucrats, the politician, the king and queen just want their tea and crumpets, and they want it luxurious.
Even when the NHS gets more money, it can't
But in order of the Peaky Blinders, we need to reset this GTA server over here.
keep up because they're dealing with an aging population, expensive new drugs, and trying to match staff salaries with inflation. And the really scary part? These hospitals are spending so much on emergencies that they don't have any funds to train their staff or even buy new equipment. It's kind of like fixing a leaking boat, but more and more holes keep on appearing. And who's paying the price for all of this? People like this nurse.
Yep.
The story of modern Britain at a human level is quite stark. From struggling to build a home to finding affordable healthcare, every single person is feeling the pangs of a
to the
decaying
other side.
nation.
Looks
Except
good
the
that
folks
way?
in finance, I
What you
guess.
mean?
Everyone I spoke to who worked in finance was pretty happy. Now, there's one more thing about London and this finance sector that I
Yeah, but the thing with like being in finance, man, is there's a certain type of persona or mentality that you gotta have to be super successful in it. And I just don't know if you want that to be the baseline mentality for your community.
learned. So how London's success in the financial sector makes the pound grow stronger? That's great for finance, but did you know it's not always the best for the economy? So your pricier currency increased the cost of British exports, meaning fewer contracts, weaker profits, and zero budget to invest in new machinery or staff training. So this whole economy reliant on financial services has also led to the productivity trap that Britain's stuck in. You see, less investments means outdated equipment, which means lower productivity, which leads to lower wages, which then leads to brain drain as talent leaves the country. And meanwhile, manufacturing continues to languish. Economists call this phenomena Dutch disease, when one booming sector, like London's finance, accidentally chokes the rest. So, in case you were conjuring aspirations to move to the
I know about a Dutch oven, but I've never heard of that.
UK, this is a reality check that you unfortunately
Trust me,
need
you don't want to be
hear
on the opposite end of
unless
a
you're
Dutch
in
oven.
finance or maybe tech.
Unless you're into that kinky shit. That looks like the shittiest fortune cookie I've ever seen. The bigger lesson?
Hold up,
Don't be like
I want
London.
to take a moment here to share an update on a bet we took 2 years back. So back then, we launched our very first video editing cohort, betting big on the idea that distribution would become the motor of every company and that people who could edit content and make videos go viral would be in high demand. Fast
Well, that's definitely true.
forward to now, the content creation
The fortune
world has
chip? Yeah, no, that's like a
absolutely exploded.
Pringles
We've seen top
fortune
entrepreneurs
cookie.
with content, and
That
even
was
heads of state and CEOs
that
are
shit
featuring on YouTube
looked
channels. It's honestly wild how this space is
unappetizing.
growing. Meanwhile, we have also reached our 10th cohort, having trained over 3,000 editors. Many
Wow.
have gone on to work with some of the biggest creators and companies, and even we hit 1 million subscribers ourselves, thanks to the amazing contributions of our
Shout out
students.
to them.
Our mastery program now goes beyond just teaching core video editing tools. We place a big focus on Gen AI, helping you create amazing videos in a short span of time and truly stand out in this space. Here is another big reason why students prefer our program. 80% of students who apply for placements and complete their portfolios actually land roles, often with competitive salaries that rival traditional entry-level jobs. If you are curious about the program or simply want to pick up some editing skills for free, join our free masterclass. The link is in the description. Britain's story
There you guys go.
isn't just
You
about
guys want some
one
editing
nation's
skills? Go in the
decline.
description.
It's about how even the richest places on earth can fall apart, and more importantly, it shows us exactly how they break.
Yeah, and it's just human. This is a human ego. This is a human shit. This is like, we're the kings right now. We're forever gonna be the king. It's like, man, once you reach the top of the mountain, it's so hard to stay on top of your game and to continue to be number one.
See, it suggests that without constant renewal, building houses, training workers, investing in manufacturing or technology, wealth can vanish in a generation. Empires fall not just from external invasions, but from within when their foundation starts crumbling one brick at a time. Every time I see a nation that was once the pride of the world or some unstoppable economic titan, I'm always reminded of how everything is cyclical. And there's a quote I keep coming back to, one that sums it up perfectly. Hard times create strong men.
Strong men create
good times.
good times create men.
Create weak men. and weak men
create hard times. Yep.
It's this vicious cycle of growth and decline, push and pull, success and self-sabotage.
It's a great
If
quote.
you watch history long enough, you see the cycle replay again and again and again. Nations, companies, even personal lives, nobody is immune. You know why I keep saying I'm bullish on India right now? In some ways, India still battles through its hard times. The infrastructure is lagging,
Yep.
pollution is high,
Yep.
inequality is blatant,
Yep.
but I feel like it's on an ascent.
But I feel like India is now self-aware of those things and has a young population. Like the average age is 27, 30 years old. It's the perfect age to not only be at the age of self-reflecting and understand and being able to discern what is good and bad within the community, but not so old that you don't have the energy to get it done. And what's more, I'm calling my shot. I think America and India are about to have a beautiful new trade relation.
Within this struggle is the energy of a place that's genuinely hungry to create something new.
Mahendra!
If the UK system feels like it's strangled by taxes, bureaucracy, and historically good times that turn weak, India might be the opposite. It's rough around the edges, yes, but it's also where entire sectors are booming. See, I'm not saying India's paradise, it is not. Just like I'm also not saying UK is doomed forever.
I totally agree,
I'm sure
Pep.
they'll recover. I really hope they do.
And now with India's new port, the Middle East corridor, and the renegotiations of trade in China, I think India and America can benefit in that and a lot to where. And this is what I'm saying. I'm glad that you brought this up. Normally in business, right? You do business with other businessmen where both sides get something out of it. Very rarely do you ever see in business where it's only one-sided deals going through a business. Normally both sides need to have some kind of benefit, right? That way it's mutually beneficial to both.
I do feel strongly that in every country, someone has to take responsibility for creating the next wave of jobs and prosperity.
That should always be the generation now. I believe that the most important thing within every country, within every community, the next generation is the most important one, the kids, right? And our goal as being the older generation is to give back to those kids the same opportunities that you had to take advantage of, if not more, right? And leave the world just 1% better than when you came into it.
And at some point, you want to be part of the story that's on the upswing, lending your shoulder to the wheel when it matters, not after everything's settled and bloated, but during the climb, so maybe we can keep that climb from curdling into complacency later on. Because yes, it would be easier to sit back and reap the benefits of an
You have to work in the
already rich
morning?
country.
Have a good night, my
until you
friend.
realize that already rich is precisely what triggers the next unraveling in this cycle.
I'll hang out. We'll get some games in
Thrive
tomorrow,
in
yeah?
Creation mode, not complacency mode. Well, for me
I like that.
personally, I'd rather be part of a growth story where I can help create better times for the next generation instead of drifting inside a system in decline. Because if there's anything history has taught us, is that every golden age eventually ends.
Yep. And you gotta appreciate the good times while they're here. Now, Pi said that the UK could totally fall apart. Scotland might leave, Northern Ireland could reunite with Ireland, and even Wales might decide to go solo. Scotland's been wanting out for years. Yep, shout out to Homelander. The Brexit just made things messier. If they all bounce and it's just England left, the whole United Kingdom thing might even not make sense anymore. Kind of crazy to think about. Yeah, because it's crazy to think about because they're like, it could happen. It could actually happen. Yeah, every golden age dies, but I think it's all cyclical, right? Like it's just a wave. Like this, the peak is the golden age, and then you have to go through where complacency, bloat, and corruption happens. Then you got to hopefully not look at that, fix it, address it, and allow it to ride. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, then please like the video, subscribe, and if you really like it, then share it with some of your friends. My goal here is to spread a positive message while sprinkling my 2 cents on big topics like American, Indian, and world geopolitics, and even small stuff like Twitch drama and online debacles. And if you want to see it live, come join me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/ActuallyElrod. That's where I'm going to do all my reactions, and after the reactions, that's where we get down a game. And if you're like, hey, I have a video that I want this dude to sprinkle his 2 cents on, then come over on my Discord and let me know and join the community there. And while we're at it, I have to say thank you to everybody who has made that Discord just so popping. I never thought I'd have a Discord that's so flowing. It's really cool to see. Shout out to you, Bobby, Omni, Demon, all of you who have been in there who are just super active. Logie, you're the man. Logie is the one who's like modding and helping run the server, so thank you, Logie. Lastly, I challenge you. I have a challenge for you. Make somebody laugh today. We all know there's enough hate and vitriol in the world. If energy is contagious like the flu, then let's spread and get everyone contagious with our positive energy, right? Not negative energy, because there's so much of that. And if we could just be a small little change in someone's day, then you never know. Maybe that's the thing that starts shifting this world to a happier, healthier, just better place. And with all of that said and done, thank you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.